My name is Sister Tracy Kemi. I'm a Sister of Charity of Cincinnati. I'm currently the vocation coordinator for our congregation, and I'm a pastoral associate at St. Leo's, which is an intercultural parish in Cincinnati. And I live in Visitation House with two other sisters. It's a community we've created for hospitality and discernment.
And hello, I am Sister Monica Seaton. I'm an Ursuline sister of Mount St. Joseph. I currently live at our mother house, and I serve our community as the director of vocations.
I am Sister Ana Gonzalez. I am a Dominican Sister of Peace, and I'm super thrilled because I'm newly perpetually professed. Currently, I'm ministering at our founded ministry, Albertus Magnus College in New Haven, Connecticut, and have the fortune to live in our house of welcome, allowing me to experience cross-congregational living.
I'm Mombike Godar, a sister of the Precious Blood of Dayton, Ohio. I'm Kenyan, and I live in Chicago with some of my sisters and two other young women. I do a number of things for ministry. So I write constantly for Global Sisters Report, but a few chapters in different books, and I'm currently co-editing a different book. I'm an organizing secretary for a collective of African theologians and scholars and pastoral workers. It's a new initiative. So I'm doing a lot of the work building up this network to have systems and processes. I also speak on reconciliation and other topics. And for my congregation, I co-chair the Racial Reconciliation Working Group.
And Tracy, we'll begin with you again. If you could share your experience of common call to religious life from within and across charisms.
All right, going first. Let's see. For me, intercongregational relationships have been absolutely central to my vocation since the very beginning. They really fuel the flames of my vocation, I think. I've told a lot of people that I feel like I have really deep roots in my congregation's charism, but I also feel this really wide network of the global sisterhood that is also incredibly important to my well-being and the way that I feel like we're called to live out religious life today. So I've experienced the common call to religious life as the gospel call. When I get together with my sisters from other congregations, there's such a gift of sharing and learning each other's charisms, but there's also like this unity and this immediate kinship that we feel because we're committed to the gospel. And this image came to me. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but I'll share it. I was thinking about how in a forest, there's many different kinds of trees, but they're rooted in the same soil. And so it's like this soil for us is the gospel and working towards the reign of God. And we do it in slightly different ways. But it feels to me like the charism is a gift that's been given to us by the Spirit. And maybe the way that we live that charism out might change a little bit as religious life continues to evolve, but the gospel is what unites us. And that feels to me like the most important thing. So I'll just start with that and then we can see where it goes.
My experience of a common call to religious life, when I thought about this question, I immediately thought about our beginnings are with our intimate relationship with God. So how we fall in love with God and how we want to share that with others. And whether we're in an Ursuline congregation or a Dominican congregation, that is our foundation for each way of life. We share that common call. Sometimes in religious lives, people equate it to like different ball teams, but I think with ball teams, you're cheering for a certain team. But my experience of religious in different communities is that I cheer for everyone. If somebody's doing great, then I'm happy for them. I mean, I just read an article in the Vision magazine about Anna, and I was so proud. I was like, oh, wow, I know her. So, how we celebrate one another and how we celebrate our gifts across our charisms and how we use them to share God's love and our mission.
I totally resonate with what Monica and Tracy have shared. And I really feel that one of the things that unites us all is that we're best friends with Jesus, right? And we are, our call is this groundedness in God. And our life in religious life allows us to live grounded in God, to carry on the word. And I love the picture that Monica, you just shared. We're all on the same team. We're rooting for each other. And I can't imagine a life where, I have great friends who are in, Mercies and Sisters of St. Joseph's and different congregations. And what we contribute through our lifestyle to the world, it's bringing the kingdom of God here now. Personally, I can't imagine living a life outside of religious life. To me, this life makes sense. It's where I am at peace, where I really feel completely fulfilled, and where I love being grounded in God and in relationship with the Creator, in creation, in interaction and intimacy with those around me. And our experience as religious allows us to support each other, to continue our mission, and God willing, allow this option of life for women to come after us. It is a beautiful life. And I hope more individuals listen and pay attention to it. It's life-giving.
I think of a common call as across all time, since different women and men centuries ago came together, some intentionally to form a religious community, and some it was almost like an oopsie, which is the case for our congregation in a way. But when I've listened to the stories of our sisters, Ellie, who's 102, who entered so many years ago, and those who are discerning a call, like a young lady I'm living with, the stories are very different, but very similar. And for me, the differences of our stories is our common call, is that those who knew at 6 years of age that they wanted to be a sister, those who discovered it at the age of 40, those who discovered it at the age of 70, coming and choosing to take these evangelical councils, which is also a common call that stretches through all our congregations all over the world, and then making a commitment to be accountable to others. That's the public profession of our vows, that we don't take these vows in and for ourselves or our congregations, but it's really for the entire church, the people of God. And then, of course, compelled by this love of Christ. So being in the world, but not of the world, but uniting ourselves through these vows to God, to the people of God. So for me, this is the common call. And as some have alluded to, when we come together as given voice, it is not that some of us have known each other for 3 or 4 years, or we are consistently keeping in touch. I feel like with Anna, we have just been meeting on Zoom of late. I saw Tracy recently. I've only ever met Monica on virtual platforms, but I know if I was in Connecticut or Cincinnati or Kentucky, and I needed a bed for the night, I would have a bed in any of these communities. That is a common call, that reassuredness that we are in this together, but showing up in the world in different ways, not just as a result of our charisms or spiritualities, but also because of our personalities and the gifts that God has given us.
I feel like if it's okay, we can have a little bit of conversation further about this. Yeah, just what you all were saying was making me think about how important this common call is, especially right now as we recognize the changes in the demographics of our congregations and everything. We know we're all talking about this. It's, it's a very important thing. But when I was in formation, I remember going to my first intercongregational gathering and meeting other sisters who were at the same stage that I was in religious life. And it was just like this breath of fresh air for me, like, oh my gosh, like I really needed this connection because like you mentioned, Mumbi, the peers is a very important part. It's like we get such depth from the relationships with our sisters of many different congregations or many different ages in our congregations. But then as we're looking toward the future, we also really need those relationships with other congregations. So for the first time, I felt like I kind of have a band. Like I would see some of my older sisters getting together with their bands, and we had a really small, like 2-person band. But then when I was able to gather with sisters from other communities, it was like I still felt that bond. And I felt like, yeah, and here are people my age who share this common call that I will get to journey with, God willing. So that's kind of what I thought of when you all were sharing.
I thought it was so beautiful how Mombi was describing this journey of calls, right? From the sister who's been in religious life for over 60 years and the one who's just beginning her journey. And I really do feel that the call is alive, the call is important, but I personally think that having exposure to sisters and friendship with each other, not just, many I'm thinking of many of the students here at Albertus, the exposure to the sisters that they get to see is very limited, and they're able to see Sister of Notre Dame de Namur working together with a Dominican sister, and they see the joy, they see the excitement, they see the commitment to carrying the mission, and I just think that's beautiful. I think perhaps as we carry on, having those ties of friendship, of celebration of this call can be an inspiration for those that are coming after us, that are coming behind us, that are looking to listen to the call, but might need that example, might need that little push. Because I wonder at times how many young ladies out there are thinking of religious life. I don't know, just talking out loud here. But Mumbi, I love that imagery of being called, that similarity yet difference. It's beautiful.
And as each of you were talking, what I thought about more and more was a sense of community, because we have our communities that we belong to, but we build community wherever we go and with whoever we encounter, so that another foundation of community with one another.
Anybody who knows me knows I live with one foot in Africa and one in the US. But also a beauty of our encounters, especially amongst the younger generation, has been that we are meeting sisters from all over the world. Some have come for school for little bits of time. Some of our sisters are going for immersions outside. And I think it's something for me that is very reassuring when I think of a common call. There are places where the numbers are going through the roof. There are places where they're turning down vocations because they cannot accommodate or cater for their needs. And this phenomena is what was happening in Europe and the Northern Hemisphere for years. So they were generating so many people that they would go in mission to other countries. And when you look at the problems of the church and the polarization and all this, is because for a long time, I feel there's been one voice about there's one way to do church, there's one way to do religious life. The beauty for me is now the reverse missionary activity that is happening. There are a lot of young female religious in this country. We just don't know them because they're coming from indigenous congregations from other countries. The beautiful thing that is happening over time is that the barriers that used to keep us separate are slowly melting away. And we are seeing this in the interactions we have, whether it's a random meeting assisted at an airport and you recognize each other and you introduce yourself and you have a wonderful conversation and stay in touch. But I think religious life everywhere, the church everywhere, the world everywhere will benefit from these cross-cultural encounters that are happening. And I see collaboration and that common call growing beyond giving voice, growing to encapsulate sisters from all kinds of places. The same assuredness I have in traveling around the US and having a place to stay or somebody to have a meal with, I feel the same is possible anywhere in the world. It's just that we haven't reached out because for a long time we have been self-sufficient. But I love the scarcity of the times we are living in because it's forcing us to change things around. It's forcing us to identify with people who are not in our peripheries. We are having to stretch ourselves a bit further. And in that, we are learning so much. So for me, that is a common call that, and I would push it and even say it's a common call with religious brothers who have so much in common, but who have existed as a minority in the church. And I think there's a lot to learn from them because they have always kind of been thrown to the back, you know? And in many cultures, they even like, this is a lesser vocation. But they have learned to flourish in the world. And I think there's a lot we could learn from them. And so I even see some of these divisions that have existed as a result of just gender. They are going to fade away because collaboration can happen across all these divides that have existed for so long. Yeah.
Okay, this is very rich and I really appreciate it. If we could share, if somebody could share about their experience with collaboration with other congregations and persons, more specific in terms of your journey.
I can't imagine my religious formation without the intercollaborative novitiate. I'm going to start with that one. That was just such a rich experience because novitiate is such an intense period of, at least it was for my life, right? Not only diving deeper into my call into religious life, my identity as a Dominican, but then all of a sudden I had friends, and that's where I met Mumbi. I have friends from different congregations, different charisms that became my peers, that we laughed and danced together, we cried together, and we were all on the same boat. And I think that was, for me, such a powerful experience, being able to be in formation with other men and women that were in a similar journey as I, that were in love with God and were diving into that deep relation, that groundedness in God, like I was. And it was so refreshing. And then, of course, Giving Voice is such a wonderful organization. And I love being part of it. I wish I could be more engaged. But there's so many opportunities for that peer development, that collaboration. And I'm also thinking here in New Haven, Connecticut, where I'm currently working, I have, as part of my journey, I have the privilege to work with several undocumented students. And we have, not too far from us, the Apostles of the Holy Cross oversee an immigration center where I'm able to comfortably refer students to a sister who will help them apply for DACA, who will help them when they are dealing with insecurities. And that is an example that I've experienced beyond Giving Voice, beyond ICN. And for me, my life is richer because of that.
Sometimes when I talk about collaboration or whatever, or vocations in general, because I'm the vocation director, I always say that I'm in a vocation desert because, in Western Kentucky, not a large city or whatever, and even to collaborate or to get together with other sisters near my age, I had to travel 2 hours at least, but I think the ways of collaboration, like you said, with Giving Voice, I've come into that game late, but I've really been grateful for the connections that I've made through Giving Voice and the collaboration. But also, I think through my ministry as a vocation director, the National Religious Vocation Conference has really opened the door on a national and regional area for me to be able to work with other congregations and men and women, and to be able to work together where I may not be able to do that in Owensboro, but I can go to Louisville where we have a regional meeting or, different things like that. So also I'm a part of the Archdiocese of Louisville. They have a Planting Seeds program. So I'm involved in that. So those are ways in which collaboration has really been beneficial for me because it's just so hard in a smaller setting. So these ways of collaboration just, I don't know, they open doors for you. And I think Tracy said something or somebody, when you were in the novitiate and you were able to see other people or in another meeting and see people going through the same stages of formation that you were in. And how can I relate to other people where maybe some of my sisters don't understand what I'm going through at my age or whatever, but others in the here and now, others can experience that with me and be on that journey also. So in those areas of collaboration, both personally and in ministry, have been beneficial beyond words.
I think there's so much collaboration happening, and some are organic and some it requires more intentionality. So for me, I'm thinking of the collaboration I see, but also what I've experienced. But what I see, for instance, I see a very intentional collaboration when Romina and Krista chose to come together and form a community in El Paso and minister at the border. But I'm also thinking of Dina, who when she needed to move to Chicago, Chioma offered her a place to stay in her community, which is a different congregation. But I'm also thinking of all the collaboration that happens, even like our congregation, that since the time I joined, our lay staff have increased, who embody our charism so well and spirituality. And remembering just recently our vocation promoter and archivist, 2 young women, doing this wonderful presentation on our foundress, that actually taught me some things. And I was like, wow, completely blown away and completely again in love with you and happy with the choice you made for the congregation you joined. But a reminder also that you do embody those qualities that our foundress was so fond of. But then thinking also of congregations that for different reasons have come together to collaborate on the nuts and bolts of religious life, the administrative things, to free more sisters to be present for mission, because if we are not about mission, what are we doing? But then I look at Giving Voice and I'm thinking of collaboration, like there's a group for writers who come together to support each other in that. But also when we gather, and I'm always very flattered to be included in the musicians group and singers. It's not something I would ever call myself, but I'm always included. Thank you, Tracy. So that is also collaboration. But then I look beyond at justice organizations and grassroots organizations. And I feel there's a call there that we need to explore further. Religious life has always been about providing solutions, and we are great at providing solutions, but there are people doing amazing things at the grassroots. And sometimes it's to attach ourselves to them, continue to let them take the lead, and we coming in because we align on certain issues, certain justice issues. So collaboration for me has happened from time immemorial. It will continue. And what form and shape it takes is up to, I think, congregations and individuals according to the needs that arise. But it's not something that frightens me. It's something that excites me, because it's also, you're not alone, but you can also leverage the skills and resources of other people so that you can maximize on your own skills and abilities. There are things I cannot stand to do. I do them if I have to do, but to know there are people who flourish in doing things that I'm not great at or things that I don't like doing, it gives me a lot of comfort. So my whole thing is, how are we going to collaborate? But I think is to remember best practices of collaboration and keep them at the front of our mind going forward, and to realize that let's not reinvent the wheel where we don't have to. Let's keep ourselves free from mission. Let's see the areas that are yet to experience the presence of love, the presence of hope that religious bring, and put ourselves in those positions and invite others to join us, and be open to whoever says we want to join you, even if they don't represent whom we would have thought would want to join us on that journey. Yeah.
I resonate with so much of that. I feel like y'all will read my journal. But I was thinking about an amazing experience that I had over the last couple of years, living at CTU in Chicago while I was in grad school, and living with sisters from other congregations in the Together program. And so it was really an intentional thing to say, okay, we're going to be going to grad school here, but we share this common call as women religious, and community and prayer are such an important part of our lives. Like, let's do that together while we're in grad school and take this journey together. So I lived with sisters from several different congregations, several different countries. And it was, of course, it was challenging, as living with any community is, but there was also such energy and connection there immediately. And we felt that common call. So we were able to create a life together that supported us in our grad school. And we took turns leading prayer, and it was really neat that we could share parts of our own charism with each other. Like when my community was celebrating a feast day, I would share that with them. So it was almost like cross-pollination. Like we were very deep in our own charism, and then we were able to share that with each other, and it was very, very enriching. So collaboration in community, collaboration in formation, which I've heard a lot of people talk about already. And Mumbi, you were bringing up justice towards the end, and that was something that I felt, just that the power that comes when women religious come together around issues that are important. Thinking about the voice that we have together as opposed to standing on our own. And I love going back to Pope Francis's letter to consecrated people for the year of consecrated life, where he talks about our call to wake up the world, that the distinctive call of religious is prophecy. And so when I think about being prophetic in the world today, what does that look like? And naming yourself as a prophet doesn't always mean you're a prophet. But what can we take from the tradition of the prophets to kind of leverage our voice and our resources together to make change? And I see that all the time when I go to a protest in Cincinnati. I know I'm going to see the other sisters and nuns there. You just know you're going to. When I was in Chicago, there was a group of women religious that would gather in vigils to remember those who had been killed by gun violence and to protest that. So I just see that power in us, like coming together around those issues of justice. And like, I think, Anna, you were saying you could call somebody at another organization and say like, hey, so having this network of sisters that are involved in a lot of different areas and ways of service, just to be able to call on each other for that. So as we go forward and the congregations are smaller, I feel like the connections still allow us to have a really strong impact.
Okay, if we could move to your thoughts on the future of religious life.
I struggle with this future planning or future thinking because we are here. Nobody on this call is below the age of 30. So we are kind of in our midlife. And I think the future is now. I think the pandemic has shown us that best laid plans can go awry at any one time. So my belief and understanding from having been in the business world for some time is that as organizations grow, they become very corporate and bureaucratic just to streamline things. Then they go through the curve and now they're on their downfall. And then this become things that actually hold back from effectiveness because it takes more to sustain structures and systems. So my present future from now desire is to let go of things that don't serve mission. And we have many of them. Is to let go of philosophies or attitudes of ways of thinking that do not serve the reality of religious life. What is that reality? People are coming in at a mature age, lots of life experience. People are coming in from more diverse backgrounds. People are coming, the needs of the world have become vaster. So there are emerging needs. Are we on the borderlands? So my desire is for nimbleness in response to mission. But if we were to take a hard, long look at who we are, that nimbleness kind of got lost at some point, and we have become people who talk a lot, who spend a lot of time deliberating. And this risk averseness is a product of doing something the same way for a long time, but it's also a product of privilege, that you can afford to take time, which is something that our founders never had. It was do or die. And so my desire is for nimbleness. My desire is to deconstruct things that do not work and reconstruct a way that will allow women who desire to come and serve God in mission can get that in an appropriate time with a proper foundation and formation. That is my desire for the future, that we shall explore different ways of being religious. I go back and think a lot about John Chichester. I do love John Chichester very much. And it's a recent article in, what do you call that booklet that comes from LCWR?
Educational papers?
Exactly. She wrote a powerful article, but it's also in allowing different kinds of membership. It's in being open to whoever shows up at our doors, desiring to learn about this life. That is my hope for the future, is that we shall be quick to respond to the needs of the world and for our world vision to be truly global and not just regional. Yes.
I think we're living in such a complex moment. And I can appreciate the complexity that our leadership teams have to hold right now as we kind of stand in this moment of transition from an institutionalized way of living that came about in the last century, because that's what was needed for the time. And now what is needed is changing and what's different. So I can really appreciate that complexity of like trying to hold all of that together. But as you were saying, Mumbi, it's like if we take a really honest look at the reality of our congregations at this time, it's just very clear that things are changing quickly and have to change quickly, and that the way that we're operating is just not going to be sustainable in the very near future. I remember going to my first congregational meeting where they put up the projections of like what the community numbers would be. I'm like, oh God, like there's going to be 2 of us and I'm going to be 50 or something like that. But if we're really honest about the way that our congregations are changing, that we need to be proactive to think about supporting the ideas of newer members that maybe have different ways of looking at things. Because I can't tell you how many times in my 10 years in religious life, people have asked me this same question with genuine curiosity and interest. You know, what do you see about the future? And yet then I see my peers presenting ideas for different ways of doing things, and it's not always welcomed. So it's almost like there's a curiosity, but then not a follow-up. So it feels like we need to be really, really supportive to the members that are coming now. And like whoever was saying before, Moonbi, were you saying we're all over 30? Like I'm the one learning technology now from the new members coming in. But to constantly keep an ear to those people that are coming in and actually being willing to listen to them and support their ideas in really concrete ways. And I think a lot of talk is happening around interculturality as well. And Moonbi was sharing about the global nature of religious life. And I think if we want a healthy future to emerge, we need to be doing that work now, especially those of us who are white sisters, because we can't wait for somebody to come and then try to get ready and try to make it a safe space for them. But we need to be actively trying to become anti-racist and to become communities that people can come and have ownership and come as they are. And I think that takes a lot of work to usher in the future. And just one more thing, and then I'll stop. As a vocation minister, it is really acute to me that we can have the best promotion of vocations possible. But what is behind that? What are we promoting? Once women come to us, what is there for them? And so I think it's essential for us to think about if we have healthy community living spaces for people. And if we don't, are we willing to let that happen intercongregationally? Do we have really good contemporary formation programs? And if not, can we pool our resources? Can we learn from other people, as many have done? Do we have compelling common ministries where women who are longing for that service can come and be a part of it? And those are questions that keep me up at night. So I think we all need to be considering them for the future.
I am very much aware that we right now are riding the tides of change, and that in a period, it could be 3, 10, 15 years, religious life is going to be different from my experience right now. And that's very palpable. Things are changing, not only in religious life, our church, our society is changing. And I like to talk to sisters who experienced Vatican II, because that was a drastic shift from many, entered religious life thinking that they would be living in one place only and they would be teachers for the rest of their lives. And then all of a sudden Vatican II happens, wild and exciting changes take place, and their lives change. And they change along for the mission. So I pray that as these changes happen, that our church, that our congregations and ourselves are open to discerning the voice of the Spirit, to be walking with God, and to be open to the changes. And there was a point about, Mumbi mentioned it, a lot of times we can get bogged down in overthinking things and over talking things. And one of the things that I've learned about sisters is that they're on time, and they're super prepared. And that's awesome. But in that process, being on time, being prepared, let's be on time, let's be prepared as we address these changes and these futures, and not get stuck in the talking. I love religious life, and I pray that some of the young ladies that I'm ministering to, if they feel called to religious life, that they have a home for religious life. In 10, 20, 30 years from now, that there's a space where a woman can live in relationship with God and with those around her, and live not only a very joyful but life-giving life filled with meaning, and one where God is at the core, that this is an option for women, and men and brothers, not just women, but all who are considering religious life. That's my hope for the future. And I'm also mindful that it's not going to be what I'm experiencing right now.
I entered the postulancy in 2000. And at that same time, these conversations were going on. Uncertainty was on the horizon. And what is the future? And is this really something that I want to commit my life to? So apparently it is, because I'm still here 21 years later. As Anna said, I love religious life, and I love the Ursuline way of life. But all of you have spoken in words that, I would probably be repeating what you have said, but I think we have to do that hard work to really reform us, some of us, from the inside out. And how do we make our communities these welcoming places for people? And I think gone are the days of large institutions. They serve their purpose, and how do we look to that newness or that new way? It's just it's remarkable when you think about what do you envision for the future of religious life. I think it's a culmination of all that we've talked about so far in this conversation of how are we collaborating with one another? How are we using the gifts that all of us bring to the table to be church and to serve those who are overlooked or not welcomed? And how do we welcome those who are not welcomed? So I just think of the quote from Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you, a future of hope, So I think that's the way I march into this future. And I have been walking for these past 20 some years, is with hope and trust. Because some days, I think, well, let's throw in a towel or something, I give up. But how do we go back to that hope? And how do we trust that God is not finished with us yet?
I almost have an image of, like, I'm not a scientist, but I'm thinking of how a lot of times if you see brains and there's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know the terminology, but there's like a burst of light and energy, but then there's connections to other things. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, but I'm thinking about the kind of this network of global sisterhood, where it seems like instead of maybe large mother houses, but smaller hubs of hospitable intercultural community that are connected with other ones. So that kind of form this network of light and energy, if that makes any sense.
I think back to another article in the occasional papers by Ted Dunn, maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, where he talked about a carve on the road. And all of us are in this place where we need to make this carve. But it's a sharp carve. So there are so many things that have to shift so that we can successfully navigate it. Otherwise, we go off the cliff. And I feel this is the time we are right now, is to make the decisions that need to be made, no matter how scary, because it's even scarier to go off the cliff. so that we can make that turn. And then, because when you're behind a curve, you can't see the future. And so what is it that newer members need to be agile and to be flexible and to weather the storms? Because there'll be many storms. If anything has shown us in this world with the political climates and with global warming and everything, we are in for a rough ride for the next few decades. So do we have the qualities to weather that storm? And so that involves putting our energies into the things that will help us weather the storm, and not in the things that really take up a lot of our attention that should not. And I think it's my last dream for the future is that the unseen hierarchies of religious life will have dissipated, that we shall listen to the wisdom of everybody, that it will be a safe space that everybody can place their dream on the table, and everybody chimes in and says, how can we support you to make it come true? So honoring the call within the call, which is very specific to as many people as there are in the room. That is my dream also for the future, is that it will allow people to live out of their most authentic self, but to also respond to that call that was placed in their heart that is very specific to each one of them. Thank you.
I loved what you just shared, Mumbi, and yes, absolutely. But I do think that it's not just looking at the needs of the younger members. We're all of this in this together. The younger members need our experienced, seasoned sisters. We need the support of each other. And I also feel that, we are living in interesting and unusual times. But, you look at the Bible and they were living in interesting, unusual times. And a few years ago, we were living in interesting, unusual times. So this is our little piece that we're getting. And it is us. It is here. It is now. And I really feel that there is an excitement and a daunting sentiment as we move forward. But to second what Tracy, what Monica and Mumbi indicated, is like, we have to take that step. We have to move forward. And for whatever reason, out of all the people in history, it is us. We are tasked to do this. So may God bless us as we take these steps to the future, and may we be open to God's wisdom and to the discernment. My biggest fear is getting so caught up with, well, this is the way we used to do it, or this is the way it is, that we become a hindrance into the movement towards the future.
And with that, I just really appreciate all of your sharing. It's very rich. I've learned a lot. And I want to thank you for bringing yourselves, your authentic selves, and your thoughts and your hopes and your dreams and your desires to this space today. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.